Michael, did you play sports? Do you play sports? Would you ever want to play sports?
This is Auto Collabs.
I wrestled in high school, and
then you were like, "Wait, this
that
is
was
sports?"
primarily because I wanted to wear the singlets.
Why would God give me this desire to wrestle?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. Maybe I had.
Okay, so you
issues.
wrestled. That's a sport.
I wrestled. Wrestled in the provincial championships. Fun side note, which is like a state championship
in Canada.
In Canada,
where you're from,
it's like a state championship with way less people.
Just kind of like Canada.
Yeah.
It's like a big country with way less people.
Yeah. Like I've never, like forget about it. You couldn't do it today. You imagine a bunch of scrawny dudes wearing singlets and the only people in the audience are other people's moms. Ain't happening today. That's how you get a tournament canceled.
Yeah. I was wondering. We've never had
that. That happens every single day in America. You kidding me?
Yeah.
Except everybody looks like this.
Right.
Everybody's holding up their iPhones. You don't even see anybody's face.
Yeah, guys, it's crazy to me actually that people buy seasons tickets to high school football games.
Oh, in Texas?
I didn't know my high school had a football team until I was in the 11th grade.
No.
And I went to an 8
I didn't
12 high school.
Well, I didn't realize
8 through 12, all 5 years. And I didn't
realize people buy season tickets to high school football anywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
It's insane.
Bro, it's like the third highest sport in Texas.
High school football.
Yeah.
Guys, they work trades.
First sport, getting rid of the US. Second sport,
shooting rattlesnakes.
Football.
Third sport, high school
football.
No, there's like trades going on here as if they're in the major leagues. Like high school footballers in Texas know what it's like to be a pro footballer. Like there was
Is there NIL stuff?
There was like a little controversy that the school district, the ISD, bought a family a house in their ISD so that their kid would relocate to that school to play football in PS a $42 million 20,000 seat stadium.
Oh my gosh.
This is real.
Insane.
I had no idea things
we
were
have
that
some
real.
of that in the Midwest too. It's not as aggressive, but it's very close.
I once I'm just gonna tell a dumb story. Well, look, speaking
that has
of things,
nothing to do with what we're
speaking of things that a lot of people don't know existing, like this is actually a really legitimate segue.
Okay,
today our guest,
that's impressive.
It is. Today our guest, Jeremy Stevens, is the new remote service director for Bozard Ford Lincoln in St. Augustine. And we're going to talk with him about like his journey on what is remote service? Like, what does that actually look like? And like why he made a big change in his career to go take the position. So we hope you enjoy this conversation with Jeremy Stevens. Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us today. We're excited for the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
You know, there's definitely my pedigree in the automotive. My first step in was in fixed ops. So there's a special place in my heart for fixed ops and also leadership things, right? Your Maxwell leadership. And so like you're like the ultimate guest in my opinion. So these two guys are just going to sit here and watch and listen. And we're going to have a conversation about fixed ops and leadership. Stop looking so cute, Cirillo.
Yeah, now I feel like I'm gonna let you down. You put me on a high pedestal.
I know. Well, you know, that's really our goal. This is actually an intervention show. So by the time this show is over, we're gonna have several of your family members on here with little notes, and you're gonna be crying.
But your ears up for sure.
But for real, like so you're at Bozard Ford, and which is just has this growing reputation for good, sound leadership principle and the culture that comes after it. I don't know, share a little bit about, I'm curious, I don't know this. How did you find your way into the Bozard ecosystem?
So it wasn't, it was just networking, just like you guys do, just networking and getting to know people. Everybody knows Ed Roberts. So, we were on a couple of panels with him and, just got to get to know him. And then, the opportunity came up and, we kind of connected and I came down and, Florida was one of those states that, if there was opportunity, I would definitely go down, not up north from where y'all are. I can't deal with
that's just me. I'm the northernmost contingent of ASOTU right now.
Yeah. Cause you were with, I think it's pronounced Heister for like 20-something years,
Yeah,
right?
I was with a Heister group for 20 years. I started as a technician there, and kind of worked my way through the ranks and stuff like that. So it was a tough decision. I
I
knew
bet.
that was my hometown too. So
Mm.
it took a
Wow.
it was back and forth, but I think at a point in everybody's life, where it's time for you to move on.
Mhm.
And that was the point that I was at. I just felt like there was something else for me, and this it kind of lined up perfectly how everything fell into place.
That's how the best
We
things
see a
do.
lot of I see at least a lot of fixed ops managers, fixed ops directors, people that are on the what I would call the more administrative side of fixed ops come through the advisor route, right? Like they start in the advisor, start as like a lane manager or a lane person, and then move to advisor and then move up the ranks through that. But you said you started as a technician. How, where did the decision come to move out of turning wrenches into kind of like the customer interaction side of stuff?
So it kind of came to the point where, of course, we were all on flat rate, and in my mind, I felt like I hit my peak there, and I was just, I felt like there was something more that I needed to do. It was like something, this inner battle that I had, and I was like, I'll find retiring as a technician. I'm good. I love working on cars, and I still like working on cars, but there was something that was kind of pulling me away, and I just kept looking. I was like, well, I love helping people. I just love people. It's easy for me, and I like to see people grow, and that pull just drew me to maybe I should try being a manager. Where I could have a bigger influence in that side of it.
Have
Are
you
you the
always had
technician that
ambition like that?
has? Well, sorry,
It's all right.
Cirillo. I'm so sorry.
It's
I
okay. I'll
apologize.
see
Go,
myself
Cirillo.
out.
It's unbelievable. I wasn't paying attention. I'm so
Now
sorry.
now I have no tactful way of raising my chair again, so we're just gonna have you always had ambition like that? Or is that something that you felt growing in you once you got into the business?
I always had this desire to, like, everybody has this desire to start their own business and stuff like that. So it was just more of, you know, not like an agreed sense that you want to do more and more and more, but just something pulling me to that way. There's always been this little thing where I feel like I could lead people. Um, Even when I started as a technician, I wasn't the shop foreman or dispatcher, but we didn't have one, so I just assumed the role. Nobody told me. I didn't ask permission. I just kind of jumped in and started helping people without the title, because sometimes it's a lot easier to lead without the title than when you get the title. Um,
Mm,
so, and
come on now.
I started falling in love
Church
with that. I
now.
was like, that's pretty cool. It's like, you can help other people, and you can see them get what they what they want and stuff like that, and it kind of gives you this fulfillment part of it. And that's how I
I,
always had that inside me. So for some reason,
that's different than I think. Maybe it's not everybody, but a lot of people when they see like manager or leader or something with the title, right? There's kind of like two main things that come into their head. One, am I getting a pay raise?
yeah.
Two, who am I in control over? Who do I get to tell what to do? But your heart for it is, who do I get to empower? Who do I get to lead? Who do I get to empower, give access to something else? Is there something that like that didn't just come from Maxwell leadership in 2021 when you became, Maxwell? That's something core and root. Where did that come from in your origin story?
So it's basically, and not get spiritual, but it is a God thing. All this
You can
leadership
get
stuff.
spiritual up in here. You
Okay,
are
so
okay. You don't
so
have to fight that.
so it does. It's that, because if you look at any leader or any guru out there, motivational speaker, if you look at their content, it pretty much comes from the Bible. Not all of them, but it's just that love others more than you love yourself.
Yeah.
And
Revolutionary concept of servant leadership invented in the 1970s. Oh no, that was way before that.
but it is that just loving, just like, I love what, your shirts say, love people more than you love cars, because it's like I've been trying to scream that and I didn't know how to put it in words, and then I see y'all guys, it's like, oh, that's what it's about. But
Ah,
but
thanks, Liza.
yeah. But it is that, just desire, it's easy for me to love people. Um, and it's just, I always rooted for the underdog, seeing somebody that's not real polished, but you see something inside them that, you can see more out of.
Gosh, that's so much a part of the fabric of the auto industry, right? And you can't go to a store without having a number of stories that just started that way. And I think if you like pulled 100 leaders out of the auto industry, like 85 of them would have that story. Somebody saw something in me, they invested in me, and I became this, right? It was always there, but they helped me become and cultivate it. You're stepping into a role that I think is probably one of the rarest, or at least one of the in the top 3 most rare positions in a car dealership across the country: remote service director. Right, there is a growing movement toward offering remote service, more convenient for the customer. In some ways, maybe more cost efficient as well. OEMs are leaning in. Are there any remote service directors that you look to for guidance, or is this kind of like building while flying thing?
It is kind of building while flying, because there is no process manual on how to do this. And when you talk to the technicians, every day's different. It's where the car's parked. It could be raining outside. We're not allowed to work in that parking lot. We may have to work on a side street. The interaction with the customers and stuff like that, and what you may get down there and realize it's a little bit more into it, and you can't really work on it at that point. So that's what's cool about it.
New
it's
problems, right? New problems,
yeah,
new
exactly.
challenges.
And it's more of opportunities and stuff like that to see, because everybody's dealership is backed up. They can't get their customers in the door fast enough. So what we're thinking is we can offset some of this stuff, because that's the worst thing you can do as a dealership. You sell an $80,000 car, and next week the check engine light's on, and they're calling your service department and saying, "Hey, it's going to be 3 weeks." And it's like, that experience is going to be horrible. But now with the remote side of it, I can send a guy out there the next day and at least give that customer a peace of mind. With a technician there.
You've scanned it. Here's what we think it is. Parts on order, or reprogrammed it. Yeah.
And the customers think it's the coolest thing when you hook a computer up to their car. They're sitting there watching, and they're just thinking that you're doing all this crazy stuff. And it just gives it that extra customer, that customer satisfaction stuff. It's like, man, they're coming to my house trying to help me out.
I'm just actually now thinking of all the dynamics, right? Like, it's a mix between like mailman, right? Amazon guy, and like garage door repair guy, right? Like all these things, you're now like in people's lives, in their space, right? Out amongst the people. And now you not only have that, opportunity to put, your foot in that area, but you also have like additional liabilities and considerations, and what happens when the dog's gonna bite you.
Big old Doberman pinscher comes out while you're trying to drain the oil.
I'm just, now that you're talking about it, you just explained that scenario, I'm realizing that, oh man, there are like a lot of, you're going to get a lot of phone calls of like,
those are all new names I've heard for a Karen. I've never heard anybody else outside of the show refer to a Karen as a Doberman, as a
oh no.
All right, guys. See you later.
See yourself out.
Michael lives in Texas, by the way. They do what they want.
Can't
He's allowed to say that. He's from Texas and Canada, so he gets both passes. Both
what I love, though, what you're bringing up is the novelty around it is, and this is where the innovative piece is for me, Jeremy. It's like innovation is not necessarily coming up with something that's never existed before. It's about assembling elements that have always existed into a new way that provides a new experience. And the innovation in this is, for me, is something as simple as, hey, we've historically always asked you to service your vehicle on our terms and on our territory. We are now servicing vehicles on your terms and in your territory. And just a simple shift like that, I think, just has a tremendous impact.
It does, because here's the good and bad about working at a dealership for as many years as I had, is you get used to hearing this bad news, so it doesn't bother you anymore. Somebody's car that won't crank, that's not a big deal. It happens every day.
Yeah.
But in their moment, it has ruined their whole day.
Wrecked their life.
Yes, exactly. And it's the worst case scenario. And plus, nobody nobody really is excited about coming to a dealership because the cool thing about me being I'm a new guy for the first time in over 20 years. So I'm seeing things totally different as a new employee. And it's like, when I come in this place, when I first came here, I was like, I didn't know where to go. And there's signs there, but you don't look at signs. You're trying not to run into anybody. And it's like,
Mhm.
where do you go? So now I'm just thinking all our customers have, we just assume, yeah, you go to service and you talk to a service advisor. It's as simple as that. But 19-year-old person, they're not going to know that. It's like
Yeah.
we don't want to go out and talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, I think about that all the time. Like the simple idea of driving on a lot, which like the normal thing when you go to a place and park there is every spot's available and there's not that many cars, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're going to Target when the Stanley Valentine's Day Cup happens, which I don't know if you guys have seen about that.
Oh,
It's
I've
been
seen it.
it's been full madness. But unless that's the case, that's the environment that when you go to a dealership, just as a customer, and you just highlighted it as a new employee, it's a bit overwhelming. Massive building, cars everywhere, not really sure where you should park. You got to
Yeah.
pull in a garage that's not your garage, that you're not used to the side,
Yeah.
and then maybe you got one of these flashing things going through it. It's a pretty like that's a wild experience, you know. For us, it's like just another day. Whoop, 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 yeah,
That's a good point. That's a good point.
man.
Explain
So
that.
yeah, you take all of that out by going to them.
Can you explain the process? Like, what is the process of a remote service tech from when they show up? Like they show up in the morning and they have probably a list of appointments, or are they just fed the next one? And then like talk us through that, because I think a lot of dealers are considering doing this, and like so the more information we have takes some of the mystery out of it, which I think
Oh
is good
yeah.
for the industry and good for consumers.
It's pretty much like anything. It's just the proactiveness of it. You can't wait the day of to try to prepare these things. So these guys are very good. We have a dispatcher that calls the day before just to verify that technicians are going to be there. So they already have that route up the day before.
Yep.
So when the technicians come back that evening, they're looking at their appointments for the very next day.
And everybody
So
comes into the store every day, right?
yep,
Trucks are
exactly.
parked at
So
the store, they come in, and then okay.
yeah, and you're talking about communication having to be pretty crucial, and that's always an issue. There's always glitches and stuff like that, but we always look at, when you focus on these little glitches, it's really only 20% of the time, but
Mhm.
the communication is so important because you got to get parts involved in. Everybody has to be on point. So it's pretty much just looking at those appointments a day or two earlier. Go ahead and stage those parts so when the techs get there that night, they're already loading their truck up for the next day. We're pulling parts that we may or may not need.
Mhm.
Um, and that's why it's so important because we always forget about how important parts are sometimes. And they're
Until
like the
you need that
backbone of
one, right?
yeah. If you ever had a bad parts department, you know the value of having a pretty daggone good one. And, it's basically supports everything. So, getting the parts manager on board, knowing that I'm going to grab extra parts and having on this van that's going to be out of his department,
Mhm.
and trusting our guys to make sure if they don't use it, they're bringing it back. So it's a lot of
Yeah, this guy's
communicating.
got parts inventory in 10 different suburbs.
Yep.
Oh, golly. Wow.
Yep.
Didn't
But
think
it
about
is
that.
that open mindedness of, getting everybody's buy-in and support because if one leg of it doesn't, you know, mesh well, it just it has that ripple effect. So
Okay,
pretty
so
much
let me talk. So
proactive.
they're loading parts for the next day's jobs that are already kind of lined up in dispatch. They come back at the end of the night. They load the parts for the next day, prep for the next day. What time do they come in and hit the ground?
So different times.
Yep.
Majority of the guys, they arrive at the store at 7 o'clock. I got another group that gets there about 9 o'clock. They're
Mhm.
usually a little bit later, just depending on their different fleet companies and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, so at 7 o'clock, and some guys, depending on what time they get back, if they come back, if they have, because with working
You
on
never know.
cars,
Yeah.
you never know. So we had one group that gets back a little bit later, so he didn't load his van up. He waited for the next morning to load it up.
Mhm.
So you kind of got to be flexible with some of that stuff. But yeah, they're definitely proactive, loading stuff up the day before. So it's the time. So usually most of them are there at 7 o'clock, ready to roll.
And there's traffic. There's all these contingencies, actually.
Golly,
There is,
it's insane.
especially here in Florida on I-95. It's like once a week. The drivers will text us. There's a wreck, and
That's
and
what you get. That's what you
another
get for all the
challenge.
nice weather.
Yeah.
You don't have any traffic in Syracuse.
Is the technology there and supporting this, like the messaging systems, the communication systems, the routes, the understanding where the driver is, when the driver is, or are you having to like basically develop communication platforms or develop communication avenues that are like one-to-one right now? Where's the technology and its ability to support this?
So most of their technology is like a web-based chat group, basically on that. We're actually testing out some dispatch softwares to kind of build some routes. But right now,
Yep.
these guys are, I mean, they're using spreadsheets right now to create these routes. So nothing complex or anything like that. They just have a weekly spreadsheet and they put the routes on there. And we got some clever technicians that'll put it on their own these different. There's so many different platforms, and trying to find the right ones that works with everybody's kind of tough. But there are technologies out there. Just
That's a
trying to find
massive
the right one.
opportunity. I think someone's going to scoop that up this year.
We're going to
Someone's
look
gonna
back
scoop
on
that
this.
up.
We're going to look back on this interview, and it's going to be laughable in 36 months, right? And it really is, because like these are the low hanging things that if you're an early adopter, you're either a part of A, figuring out how to do it best, or B, hanging on until the solution is in place.
Yep.
Which is just another indicator that you are an early adopter pushing the envelope. And we know Ed Roberts is not one to sit around and wait for somebody to do something. He's
Yeah.
we can figure this out. Let's try it. Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I love that we also time-stamped this conversation, because when somebody does do it, we'll get royalties into perpetuity.
Yeah, let's start saying all the ways we can think of to do it in a list. So you're like, oh, we said that.
We'll put a few patent filings together. We'll throw all our names on it, and it'll
The funny part is there just like several dozen other industries that do things like this on the regular basis.
That's right.
It's actually really surprising. Like any home repair technician, HVAC techs, right? Like they have a route, they have parts every day. They have customers, they're in and out of houses, working on a lot of different types of units. It exists. It's really interesting that with as much money and resource and reach as automotive has, is these things were still. It actually just shows that it's reacting to a need faster than it can actually stack the tech to do it. It's like essential tech only, and let's start seeing what happens.
It is aggravating, because it's like, as far as like dealership and manufacturer, we got EV cars and cars that can basically drive themselves, but our software system
runs on DOS, right?
Runs on DOS.
It's like, okay, we got to catch up with the times, and I think it's coming. I think this. You could definitely see that a lot of software DMSs are starting to kind of change that a little bit.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. At some point, I mean, I'm sure the technician will be able to access the vehicle's computer from a distance, right? Like over the air. Technician's like, oh, I'm going to work on this 2023, Ford F-150 Lightning. Right now, because it's in the system, he can press the button, access it, read the code, right? Try a couple things. Like that's coming. And
it's already here. They can already do that.
Oh, they can?
See? Yeah, that's how much we know.
If only we recorded this podcast a year ago.
Not the actual technician. Not the actual technician, but we can look in to see what's codes in their cars and stuff like that. So it's
that's pretty cool though.
Smart. Yeah,
that's amazing.
At what point can who can see that information?
So usually, and this is still new to me because it's a whole different brand. So I'm drinking from a fire hose because I never worked for Ford before. But yeah, so we had this instant where they would look back at I wish I could tell you the name. But they went back through and they could tell what code was in the car and all sorts of stuff like that through the manufacturer website.
Oh, through the manufacturer website. Yep. There you go.
It's all there.
So somebody's going to laugh at this. It's like, that idiot don't even know what that's called. But
hey, look,
that sounds like someone who's learning.
We'll give you a break, and you're learning. And the thing about it is, like, at this point, and we'll circle back to the fact that you've got this passion for leadership. Like, good leadership can empower people that already know how to do the job, and learning along the way works. And so you're going to have the ability and already do have the ability to coach these people into the success that you are going to demand out of that department. So that's amazing. Well, Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure. We've laughed, we've hung out, we've learned a couple things. We learned that you can do something that Paul thought he was dreaming up. And, we're excited for your new role, and we can't wait to see what comes out of it. Thanks for joining us here on Auto Collabs.
All right. Thank you for having me.
My favorite time in every single podcast that we have is when one of us is like, oh my goodness, what about this amazing inventive idea? And then the guest is like, yeah, that already don't. That's
you guys are easily excitable. Well, what Jeremy did tell us after the interview was that he had left the dealership world as a technician to start his own shop, and there was a fire, and the whole shop burnt down in an hour. And this was like 15 years ago. And he bought a trailer, went to the Craftsman store, remember those, filled it with tools, and started his own on-site repair facility. We're like, how come you didn't tell that story in the interview?
Been doing remote work for 15 years.
I mean, I think it's just indicative of somebody who understands how to get things done and that doesn't let anything get in their way.
I think he had media training. I think somebody ahead of this was like, reserve the best story for when they stop record, because then they'll invite you back to tell the story.
Without a doubt. We have to visit them. We've been saying we want to visit Bozard Ford for a long time.
We've got to. I mean, what an amazing organization.
Let's just show up.
Amazing organization. I love following Ed's posts on social. I'm definitely going to connect with Jeremy and see what he's
and if
all
you
about.
Haven't met Letty and Bo,
Bozard,
those people, they don't mess around.
We're just going to show up. That's it. They have a diner there, right? There's like a restaurant.
They got everything. They feed your kids.
We're gonna knock up. We're gonna knock up one day, but
there you go.
Oh, I was
We're
like,
gonna have the whole
with
video entourage with us.
Who's he knocking up? What is he saying?
Stop.
Well, in America, like you knock up, you go to.
I don't know about that. We're gonna get out of this podcast before we get too deep into it. Hey, on behalf of myself, Michael Cirillo, and Paul J. Daly, thanks for joining us on Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs.
Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?